Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sonic Academy. My name is Eastbound, and I will be discussing low-end theory as promised. Now, before I get started, I do want to put a disclaimer out there that this is extremely DIY. I'm a music creator, not a content creator, so I'm just using whatever I have. Any feedback that you guys have, please let me know. I really appreciate it so I can improve videos coming up, right? So before I get started as well, I want to say that this is not particularly for advanced people or beginners. I am talking to everyone because I think that there's information out there on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, but we also have the attention span of a goldfish. So I am actually going to dive deep rather than 3 quick tips how to make your bass slap, okay? This is not that. I've already prepared a session to talk about low-end theory. I'm trying to teach a methodology, a mindset, a way of thinking, and a way of decision-making. I hate to break it to you, but all these plugins, they kind of do the same thing. The goal is that you can use whatever plugins you already have to make your productions better. I have the session loaded up here. I'll play a little bit of the beat first and foremost. This beat is the instrumental to a song that I did with Dom Valley called Revenge. The 808 that I used here is, 2 808s from the Benny X pack. So, okay, what is bass? Let's start with that question. Bass is just bass frequency, but what does that mean, right? Frequencies are things that we hear, but it's a term that gets thrown around a lot without an actual explanation. So, as you can see here, this is just a digital EQ. It starts here at 20 hertz, okay, and it goes all the way up to 20K, which is 20,000 hertz. This is the human hearing range. Anything above 20,000 hertz, you can't hear unless you're a dog and you have crazy hearing. Then, I'm impressed, but you're not. You're a human. Similar to anything below 20 hertz, you cannot hear. You can maybe feel. For example, at movie theaters during horror movies, they would play 19 hertz to evoke some sort of sense of discomfort before a big pop-up scare happens. But they're playing 19, not 20. The reason why is because you can hear 20, but 19, you can't hear, but you feel it. Bass frequencies happen here, okay, in this realm over here. Anywhere from 20 to 50, 100. 200, we're going towards the mids, okay? 20 to 50, I would consider sub-frequencies, so like extremely low. 50 to 200 would be bass frequencies, okay? That's more like a bass guitar rather than a sub. So what's frequency? Frequency is how frequent the driver of your speaker moves front to back. And I have a little video loaded up so I can kind of demonstrate what I mean by that. This is obviously slowed down, but this is what your speakers are doing. Including headphones if you're wearing any. Also, if you're not wearing headphones, please put on headphones because we're talking about bass frequencies here, and if you're listening through it on your iPhone or whatever, you're not going to be able to hear it. So grab a pair of headphones. Anyways, so your speaker, headphones, anything that makes sound is going to have something like this, okay? Small, big, doesn't matter. It's going to have something like this. But what does this do? How does this even work? It's actually fairly simple. It's a magnet, and if you charge that magnet with positive amplitude, it will move forward, and if you charge it with negative, it would move backwards, right? And that's how you get this movement. And based how fast those changes from positive to negative happen, it moves up and down. So that's what happens. But why does that happen, right? It's similar to water, right? If I splash the water, it will create a ripple effect, and that ripple then travels. Air does the same thing, it's just that we can't see it, but it does the same thing. There's ripples in the air that travel to our ear. It enters our ear and then hits our eardrum. Our eardrum then picks up those frequencies, sends it to our brain, and that's how we experience sound, okay? That's the foundation of how we actually hear sound in the first place. It's very important to know that. Bass frequencies signify how often that speaker moves up and down. So how is that quantified? It's quantified by these numbers here, hertz. And hertz stands for cycles per second. So 20 hertz means that this cone moves up and down 20 times in 1 second, which is pretty fast. But, considering that there's frequencies all the way up until 20,000 hertz, which is 20,000 times per second, it can get pretty fast. This is meant for bass frequencies. So a cone like this here, this bass driver here, is meant to produce frequencies usually anywhere from 20 up until 100, maybe 200, something like that. Most speakers actually can't even reproduce 20 hertz because it's so low. You would need an actual subwoofer for something like that, okay? But luckily we have headphones, and speakers and technologies come a far way, so we can somewhat experience 20 hertz. I will load up a tone generator. So what you just heard is 333 hertz for all our angel number people out there. I'm gonna play you 1 hertz, and I'm gonna play it very loud. Okay, careful. Here we go. You heard nothing. I heard nothing. Look at the meter. It seems like we should be hearing something, but we don't, because it's 1 hertz and we can't hear that. Because that means that the cone is moving 1 times per second. It's like a clock, it just moves once. So if I bring it up to 10 hertz, again, nothing. You don't hear that. Now I'm gonna play 19 hertz, the horror movie frequency. So now some of you may say like, hey, I heard that. I have headphones on and I definitely heard that. Yes, I know. But you didn't actually hear 19 hertz. What you heard are the distortions of what 19 hertz does to your speakers because it can't reproduce that. So you're not actually hearing 19 hertz, you're hearing the distortions. So now 20 hertz, you should be able to hear that. Okay? Yes, we can all hear that. Now if we go to 40 or 50 hertz, it becomes a bit more clear. You can really clearly hear that, right? Much clearer than 20 hertz. I'm gonna foreshadow a little something here, but pay attention to how loud 20 hertz is. Okay? And look at this meter over here, right? Look how high up it goes. All right? Now I'm gonna play 60 hertz. It's in the exact same place, but I think we can both agree that 60 hertz sounded much louder in amplitude than 20 hertz did. Why is that? Well, because over the years, from hunting gathering days, our ears became tuned to specific frequencies that are that equate threats. So leaves rustling, footsteps of predators. Our ears are still like that. We haven't really evolved much since those days. So because of that, our ears are still sensitive to certain frequencies and less sensitive to others. However, in our voltage meter, which is this over here, voltage meaning simply the amplitude coming into the channel, which does not always equate exactly how loud you hear it. As you've seen earlier, I played 1 hertz at -1 dB and you heard nothing. So this is where apparent loudness becomes a thing, but that's a topic for another day. Once you really understand the foundation, you can use that to creatively manipulate that. So the reason why bass is a bit of a B word to deal with in audio is because it's very heavy in energy. It's heavy in voltage, much heavier than a snare or a piano or an open hi-hat or anything like that, right? Bass just simply takes up more energy. And because of that, it becomes hard to handle. It's easy to make your beats loud if you don't have the 808, but as soon as you put the 808 in, all of a sudden you have to do all these kinds of balancing acts with making sure you still hear the bass without it sounding choked and overcompressed, etc. There is ways to kind of go beyond that, and that's with harmonics. Harmonics is also a whole other subject, and this is why it becomes a little tough to explain certain things to you guys, because in order to understand certain things, you would have to also already understand other things. But when it comes to bass, very often people think, first and foremost, that something needs to be done. But ideally, if you pick the right bass sample, nothing needs to be done. You don't even have to put anything on it. I loaded up all these files, all these stems into this session, and there's nothing on it. This is not the actual session of the song, okay? So I'm not gonna lie to you guys and be like, I put nothing on it, I'm so good at what I do. No, I definitely added plugins for sure. I just loaded up the stems here just for this video. If you guys do want to have some sort of an idea of how I process my 808s, classic answer, but it depends. I will get more specific though. Usually I would go for something that adds harmonics, saturation. This could be anything, man. Decapitator, black box, true iron. Honestly, anything that adds harmonics will do the job. Why? What's the point of harmonics? The point of harmonics is harmonics are frequencies that are playing in harmony with the root frequency. So in this case, this bass, if you listen to it just by itself, as you can hear, it's not just bass. There's also stuff happening even all the way up until the high end. Here. All this fuzziness, right? All of those frequencies come together to create one sound. It's harmonious sounding. What I'm talking about harmonious is kind of similar to like la 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 la. I can't sing for shit, but you get what I'm saying, right? If you have a frequency and you play a frequency that's in harmony with the other frequency, it sounds pleasing, just like when someone's singing and then someone else harmonizes, it sounds good. Saturation plugins pretty much do that. They add other frequencies that are in harmony with the root frequency, making it sound fuller. But the good thing about harmonics is usually that they happen in the higher spectrum of frequencies. Why is that good? Because, well, a lot of speakers nowadays don't produce those low frequencies accurately. Us as producers, I'm sure we're in the studio a lot where we have speakers that can produce these frequencies, but your average Joe doesn't have those speakers. They don't have an interface to play high quality audio. They just have an iPhone, they have AirPods, they have a Bluetooth speaker, they have a TV, and they have a laptop. That's where they consume their music. So how can you make sure that you can still give them that feeling of the bass without it actually being there? With harmonics. Because these speakers can't produce the low frequencies, you're masking those low frequencies with the higher harmonic frequencies to trick our ear into believing that we're hearing the low frequencies. I can somewhat demonstrate that. If I take this off, because mind you, this bass was already treated beforehand, so it has harmonics in it already. I'll play it. There's no bass frequencies happening here. I'm cutting it off at pretty much 200 hertz. There's kind of no bass happening, but for some reason, you get the full experience of what that 808 would have been. So let me get a bit more dramatic with it, and I'll put it on the master channel, okay? So now this EQ is on everything. Consider that like a very cheap speaker, like a radio speaker in the mall, or your iPhone speakers, which I believe they cut off at like 300 or something. So even though we don't have bass frequencies, you could still experience the notes of my 808. Why? Because it has harmonics. So if it wouldn't have had harmonics, and I will demonstrate that as well. Here, I'll play a pure sine wave of 30 hertz, okay? Do you hear anything? I don't hear anything. Sound is playing, but we don't hear anything. Funny enough, there's actually nothing even coming into my master channel until I turn this off. Now you can hear it. No, you can't. Because it's happening here. And it's a pure sine wave, so it has no harmonics. It's clean as F, right? How can I, because this is pretty much your iPhone over here, okay? This is where your iPhone is starting to make sound. So you won't hear this. If I just played this sound on your iPhone, you wouldn't hear this. Watch what happens. I'll leave this on here. Watch what happens when I start adding harmonics. For example, a lot of people have Decapitator at this point, so I will just use that. Okay, nothing yet, but watch. Oh, all of a sudden we can hear. Even though there's no bass frequencies, we're here cutting it off at around 300 hertz, which is the range of your iPhone, give or take. Don't quote me on it. But all of a sudden you can actually hear something, right? And if I go up in the note, if I go to like 60 hertz. Ooh, look, I did the slides without the slides, guys. Wow. You get my gist. You can hear the 808. You can't hear the bass, because then it would sound like this. Right? This is why harmonics matter, guys. I hope that this really made sense to you guys, but this is the mythology behind why we use harmonics. So a lot of people just slap any saturation plug-in on their bass without even knowing why they are doing it. For bass in particular, this is why that matters. If you were to split your 808s up, right, and I'll demonstrate that quickly. If I split my 808s up in two, okay, so I have one over here, I put a fab filter on it, and I cut off everything except for the very, very sub lows. So all we're hearing right now is only the subs, okay? And then with this one, I cut off everything. I cut the subs off, except and leave the high end alone, right? I can now control both. So this is a very basic example. If I were to actually do a trick like this, it would be a little bit different. But I'm trying to show you more of a technique in terms of how you can manipulate your bass and your harmonics, because the harmonics is what's going to come through on, you know, the TV, the laptop speakers, your iPhone. The subs won't. But that doesn't mean that no one is going to hear the subs. Some people, well, a lot of people have headphones. They actually have a nice system at home because they really care about music. They can hear the subs. So don't neglect the sub. Control it. Keep it in a nice place. But be mindful of the harmonics for the people that do not have them. And find a nice balance so everyone can enjoy the music. So that is my intro into low-end theory. I hope that this, you know, helped some of you guys. You know, I didn't want to really like go into plugins and stuff like that. If you guys do want me to go into plugins, like plugins that I may be using for bass, etc., let me know. I can definitely dive into that. Next up, I do want to talk about clipping and gain staging, which was voted second and third, I believe. So I do want to answer you guys on that, and I want to talk about that as well. But this was low-end theory, so I wasn't trying to go into plugins, etc. So again, thank you guys for taking the time, and I will see you very soon. Peace.